Hi, everyone. Always takes a second for people to join. Hello. It's been a while. Okay, today I'm making a bread pudding using croissant. Okay, so these are wonderful, amazing croissants from Montreal, because that's where I live. And they're super good quality, but they are 2 days old. So now is the time for me to use them in a way, get creative. So I don't know if anyone is a fan of bread pudding, but I'm going to be making a croissant bread pudding. So instead of using bread, I'm using croissant. And the goal, whoops, no, hey, just scissors fell. The goal is to get this. This is what I'm doing today. This is the recipe of what I'm doing. So it's croissant in bread pudding. So I've done this a few times before where I kind of bake, but feel free to ask me questions, to chit chat. I'm going to start by cutting up the croissants into three pieces. So this is going to be a very small dish. I only have like 3 croissants to use. And I'm going to adjust my camera so you can see what I'm doing. Okay, so hopefully this works. Yeah. You can see my workstation. So I'm going to start cutting the croissant into 3 parts. Okay, so this is a great way to reuse croissants. After a few days, they get old. Hello! Hi, Life Priestess Pendragon. Good to see you. Today is an Ask Me Anything day, so you can totally ask me. It's Sunday, or you can ask me questions, or you can just chill with me as I make bread pudding using croissant. Hi P, hello, happy Sunday. So yeah, the point is I'm gonna I've never made bread pudding, so we're gonna see how this goes, let alone with croissants, but it felt like such an exciting opportunity to use croissant. And because it's a small, dish, I'm gonna arrange them here, like this, yes. How is everybody doing these days? Oh shit, this might be a little too tight. If anyone has made bread pudding and want to give me some tips. Hi, user with a lot of numbers. Hi, Underground Science. You had me at croissant. Okay, I think I should get a bigger dish, don't you think? This is too small. You're all so sweet. Thank you so much. This has been such an interesting summer, creating content and teaching courses. I was so busy with the decolonial summer school, like teaching all these workshops, and we just wrapped up. So that's how I'm able to come back to the lives and like chill with you all and, chit chat. And because I wrapped that up. The replays are going to be available soon. So that's also cool. Okay, hold on. So, do you all live in a place where croissants are delicious? Because I do. I live in Montreal and they're so good. Like, look at the lamination on this. Okay? Look how good this is. The workshops went really well, actually. They were really, really good. We have such a supportive, inquisitive, like passionate community. Like that's what I'm so excited by. It's just like we're really like everyone wants to think, and you know me, right? You know me, I'm an academic, so the courses were basically like full on like grad seminars. So they were dense. They were dense. But people seem to really love them, and I'm gonna make them available for replays for purchase because folks are like, I want to see them. So I'm like, oh, cool, you want a replay? I'll make the replay available for you. Look, this is so much better. More space, room to breathe. I can put the custard in here. So that's what we're gonna make next. We're gonna make the custard. So yeah, how's everybody? How's your Sunday going? If you have questions for me about stuff, the last post I did was about the new age to alt-right pipeline. I'm gonna start posting more about that actually. We talk about it a lot in the workshops. I don't actually go into a lot of depth on my TikTok. It's just really hard for me to do content in 3 minutes. Also because like no one watches the full 3 minutes. So workshops is where like I really like, we do 3 hours of like deep dive. Yes, hibiscus bread pudding using croissant instead of bread. The underground scene, your evolution of work has been great to witness. Oh my gosh, thank you. It has evolved, eh? It really has evolved. I'd love to hear more on like what you've seen evolve specifically. I also feel like in terms of my content, I've gotten a little bit angrier. When I started, I was a little bit angry, but as I started discovering more and more like damage and harm that's been done to people by the wellness and new age community, I've gotten angrier. And I think there's also like a sense of urgency that I feel because I'm like, guys, like we really need to be talking about this, you know? Hi, Shayna. My grandma used to make bread pudding for me. Our relationship was complicated, but it's a good memory. Oh, I'm glad that it's a good memory. Yeah, my top. Oh, it's a really old thing. It's from it's like lace in the back. It's I'm ashamed to say it. It's from Abercrombie and Fitch when I was like 21 and I thought it was like a cool shop, you know, because it was like aspirational, like white girl beauty. And so it's like one of the few things that I could afford from that shop. It's like a remnants of a younger self that wanted to, you know, be like, you know, like the it girl, you know. So Abercrombie was that promise, but of course Abercrombie has all these issues and was like fucked up. From what I've seen, it feels like every area has a pipeline to the alt-right. Absolutely. I was just thinking about that yesterday. I was chatting with a friend, like even we were talking about like the demonization of coffee, like because I love coffee and a friend is staying with me and she loves coffee and we're just like loving coffee together. And I was just like, why is there such a demonization of coffee in the wellness community? And I'm like, I seriously think that in a lot of these spaces that repackage Christianity, it's so black and white. It's so good or bad. Like there is no space for nuance. So coffee becomes this like object of demonization because there is no space for complexity. Like, yes, people can be addicted to coffee, but people are also like living in capitalism and they're exhausted. Like, why are we not talking about like the exhaustion? Why are we not talking about like the depletion, people being depleted, you know? So it's very simplistic. And I saw that one time, like, there was a human design post that was like, yeah, I quit coffee because it's messing with my intuition. And I'm like, okay, we need to rewind because at this point, even coffee and cutting coffee has become like a pipeline, entrance to the pipeline. Like, I don't know. These are just some thoughts. User, have you thought of making a virtual spiritual space? Virtual spell space or virtual spiritual space? I actually, if you're asking about a spiritual space like community, I actually have been working on that. I'm creating a private community, kind of like a Facebook group, but like on another platform for folks to connect and share experiences. Right now, it's only going to be available for students who have taken my courses and who purchase replays of the courses, because I want it to be like more focused on like the course. Like after you've taken the course, if you have questions, if you have thoughts, like I want you to be able to share that with me and share that with your peers. And then once the community like strengthens and becomes like a stronger platform, I will open it up for you know, members to participate and share. It's just like we need each other, right? Like we need a space where you can talk to each other, you can connect with each other, you can all like share and heal and grow together. and it's not like, I don't want to be at the center of it, because right now, like, you're communicating with me, not with each other, because that's the format of TikTok. So I think a platform would be great for that. So user with lots of numbers, hopefully that answers your question. Sun, moon, and rising. Sun, moon, and rising. I'm a Leo sun, Libra moon, and Scorpio rising. I feel like in my content, you really get the Scorpio rising. It's like the mysterious, the kind of dark, the kind of angsty, rebellious energy. But once you get to know me, like, you just see the Leo. Like, I'm just not scary at all. New age gaming comics can everywhere lead to the alt-right. It's scary. Yeah, it's true. I'm actually planning on doing content about Westworld. Like, has anyone seen the latest Westworld? The latest season? I wanted to do like a little video being like, what does Westworld and the alt-right have in common? I'd be curious to hear your thoughts if you're thinking about this. What does Westworld and the alt-right have in common? And we see this a lot in like Marvel comics as well. Which is like, I mean, I don't know a lot about the history of Marvel comics, but didn't it also emerge in the 60s during like anti-communist propaganda during the Cold War? Like, it would make sense that like Marvel is aligning with like this kind of like patriotic and pretty conservative values. Oh, thank you, underground scene. Witnessing your confidence, drive to open minds, you're stepping into yourself and the truth around you. That's very true. It's true. Like, if you kind of see like my earlier content, I was still like looking, and I'm still looking, you know, honestly, I'm still looking, like I'm still journeying. I have not reached a destination in any kind, shape, or form. But I've also kind of like been trying to be healthier around TikTok, like not post as often, not respond to every comment. Like, I used to spend hours and hours responding to every single thing, and it's just like not sustainable. So I'm trying to be like better with like digital wellness. Thank you, Shayna. I always love everything that you say. The demonization of caffeine in general also is ableist, as it helps people who are neurodivergent. That's great to know. Like, coffee is beneficial. Coffee is a ritual. Coffee is so helpful and like a beautiful addition to our routine. Where we make spells to dismantle white supremacy and capitalism. You know, user, it's not my specialty. Like, being a spell maker is not my specialty. If anything, if I were to like, you know, as a witch, I would consider myself more of a knowledge witch. More of like a, you know, like, with me, you come to me to read books, to ask big philosophical questions, to deconstruct like notions, and to do theory and philosophy. That's my niche. But spells, like, I'm sure there's plenty of witches out there who would do way better spells. And if anything, like, I would want like witches to come to my space and like learn how to be anti-capitalist, and then use their witch and spell knowledge and bridge that. You know what I mean? I do spells, but like they're very basic, and I'm not an advanced witch in that sense. I'm not a spell person. So, but I'm sure that there's a lot of spiritualists that would be in the community who would be great at spells as well. So, but it wouldn't be my niche, you know? Yeah. Yeah. New Age belief, hibiscus hydrangea, New Age beliefs seem so linked to the alt-right, as it's a spiritual form of whiteness. Yeah, you would have loved our workshops, my workshops. Like, this is exactly what we peel away at, we chip away, what we deconstruct that, all that stuff. Stealing, appropriating everything because whiteness makes them feel like they're owed it. Yes, this is the introduction to decolonization. We talk about like cultural appropriation, colonial theft, the history of colonization. And like, the appropriation is not just like in customs and traditions and objects. It's also like there's colonization that happens in knowledge itself. So there's like knowledge systems that get colonized and transformed. And like one example of that is objectivity, how the West is so like objectivity and rationality and proving things, and that's a very Western way of doing things. And so it's used as a tool to discredit like indigenous or Eastern, philosophies that are a lot more like less focused on like proof, they're just more mystical, they're more spiritual, they're more like mind-body connection. But then you'll have like Western people being like, prove it, it's not valid until you prove it. That's also a form of colonization. Yeah. I did watch the new Doctor Strange. I actually love Marvel. It's a guilty pleasure because I can see a lot of issues with it, but sometimes I just need to turn my brain off and I'll just watch Marvel and enjoy it because I love like the mythology and the magic and the fantasy world. But I would have to refresh. I'd have to refresh on the new the new Doctor Strange. I did see it. But I kind of forgot it, so I can't. Yeah. Marvel. I mean, it's not a monolith. Like I think Marvel does sometimes like do good comments, and honestly, like Marvel's been getting better at representation, wouldn't you say? Like there's more representation than ever before, and I think that's also important. Like we want to move, we want to do better than representation, but it's still important. So like I don't know if anyone's seen like the series, like Miss Marvel, for instance, or Moon Knight. I loved Moon Knight. There was like an element of like Egyptian mythology, which was cool because I felt represented, and there were like some, Middle Eastern actors as well and like important roles and not, stereotypical roles. Yeah, Sheena, coffee and caffeine are stimulants which work differently on a neurodivergent brain. Thank you for that. Thank you for sharing that. Knowledge witch, yes. Really, literally, that's what I am, a knowledge witch. Oh, thanks, Shayna. Thank you for recommending my workshops. The replays will be available soon at some point, just because, there's just so much in those workshops that is valuable, even though it's not like a live workshop anymore. So it'll be available for purchase. Yeah, it's true. The West does neglect and admonish emotions. So the next step is like, okay, well, New Age, I think New Age sometimes has like a good premise. Like, it's like, oh yeah, like we've neglected emotions. Like, let's embrace our emotions. But the way that New Age people do it is that they turn their gaze to other cultures that don't have this like mind, body, brain, emotion separation, but they end up stealing and appropriating and distorting and transforming. And so New Age doesn't actually question or dismantle the patriarchy. It doesn't actually question or dismantle colonialism. It just takes what it wants, but it makes it palatable to the already existing like white patriarchal frameworks that exist today. So there isn't really anything that the New Age is doing that is like revolutionary. On the contrary, it's a pretty like, it confirms the status quo. It like just reestablishes the status quo. Yeah, simply cannot take any form of criticism. Yeah, it's true. And they'll tell you that it's like you're in your ego and therefore you can't, you're like, they kind of flip it. It's like they're not taking criticism because they're in their ego, but instead they'll flip it and say, oh, you're in your ego because you're not like just like swallowing whatever I'm telling you to accept as a reality. So people who question end up being demonized, but it should be the other way around, right? Like, why are you not being accountable? Yeah. Like one of them was using a book that had some good info also lead to the death of chronically. What? What is this book? Who got duped by its creator. I told them why the book was bad and they got angry at me for that. I mean, honestly, like it sounds so cringe that you have a very valid point that you're expressing to a group, but then the group just kind of like, jumps on you and tells you that like you're wrong, and it's very uncomfortable. I'm sorry that happened to you, and good on you for speaking up. It had known herbal remedies, but also cancer cure. Yeah, it's a good thing to put cancer cure in quotations. Yeah, the power of propaganda. The herbal remedies for a cold or sore throat were good, but the other stuff was awful. Wow, I wouldn't be surprised if it like fits into like a bigger like cultic space. Like sometimes I find that like these cultic spaces get so hung up on like dieting because it just kind of makes their audience like weaker and starved, and so therefore more open to receiving like totally weird and made up concepts, and makes them more vulnerable to manipulation. Like if your following is starving, like they're more likely to just, you know, and I'm not making this up. Like I was listening to the podcast that I talked about on my post, like about the Yogi Jagat, the one who succeeded in like being at the helm of the Kundalini cult, and she was telling her audience to only eat fruits that start with a P, and like be on like a 1 month diet where they're only eating fruits that start with a P, and like that. At the same time, she was just like really being super manipulative and abusive, and like when you're starving and you tell your people that you're like, you make up some weird science and you tell them to eat fruit that only start with a P, like your people, your followers are going to starve and they're going to be super fragile, you know, and it's on purpose, you know, it's not a coincidence. Yeah. Yeah, it's a good thing to call it pseudo medicine because it's like not real. Yeah. Yeah, it does hurt a lot of people. Hi, Nada. How can we talk of divine masculine and feminine without subscribing to a binary logic? Is that even possible? Yeah, that's a huge question. Which I discussed in like a couple of my workshops. We dove into that like a lot. So you probably would be interested in checking that out because there's like 3 hours plus of exploration of that topic. And yes, it is possible to move beyond a binary logic. It's a question of framework. It's a question of theoretical like framing of the issue. So like I would want to invite you to look at the history. Like, so the history of the binary is, you know, a very specific like Western history. So like, for instance, like binary is not necessarily like binary. First of all, binary is different than a duality. Like you can have two forces be in duality with each other and create something new in that duality. But a binary is very simplistic. It's very geometrical. It's like either or. And like when you create a binary, you end up only giving people two choices. And so when someone doesn't get to fit in one of those two boxes, they get sanctioned, they get punished, they get demonized. They get called deviant. That's where like the concept of deviancy comes from. Deviancy comes from a Western society that operates on a binary. So then you have like people like queer theorists and philosophers who are just like, okay, like how do we move past the binary? In order to move past the binary, we have to question and understand how the binary came to be in the first place. And how is it that norms get to form themselves? How is it that norms exist and create this like normalizing behavior? And so we would want to look at also like how gender and sex are constructed, because divine feminine masculine, like it's a construction. Because feminine and masculine, they mean very specific things in our society. So when we talk about like divine feminine and masculine, like we're actually speaking of a construction. We're not speaking about something that exists in nature. We're making that up. And of course it's a construction that has very real effects. So anyway, this is a very like, it's hard to answer your question without going through all these elements. So I'm not actually answering your question. I'm just giving you the elements to consider. And those are the elements that kind of like make up the workshop. Like, so that would be a much better space for you to check it out, because like, yeah, you're talking from the perspective of that construction. Like you want to know how it's constructed. How do we challenge that construction? We challenge the construction of masculine and feminine by actually looking at the history of the construction. Like so instead of looking at it as something that's natural, as something that is out there in nature, the perspective of construction is to say, actually, these things are not natural. They're constructed by people. And they're then confirmed, like Judith Butler talks about gender acts of gender. Like, when you're born, you don't, as a baby, as a toddler, like you don't know what masculine and feminine is, but that masculine and feminine, it gets created and reinforced over time. So you learn as a kid because you're being disciplined in a specific way, in a specific direction, right? Like girls are meant to be obedient. They're meant to be quiet. Boys are meant to be this or that. So like, you start learning from a young age from the society around you that this is how you're supposed to act depending on your gender. So Butler talks about gender being an act, a ritualized repetition. You have to constantly repeat it to people that this is what you're supposed to be doing according to your gender. So you can trouble that. You can definitely trouble that binary. And that's what queer people do. That's what gender queer people do. That's why queer people are so important, because their very existence is troubling that binary. It's basically saying, I don't subscribe to the binary. I have that agency to say, like, I don't need to act again, like in that way. So the issue is construction versus divine feminine and masculine, which is basically saying that the feminine and the masculine exist in nature. So it's kind of like a bigger debate around like nature versus construction. I hope that helps. But I'm definitely like, it's too hard of a topic to dive in like here. Like the workshop will be a better place for you to explore that more rigorously. You're still subscribed. Absolutely. That's the problem, right? Like subscribing, saying divine this or that is kind of like reasserting the construction of masculine and feminine. It's basically it's not just reasserting, it's naturalizing it. It's basically saying the feminine and the masculine exist in nature. And that's like, we talk about this in the workshop too. It's like using nature as a device, as a way to say, oh, look, it's in nature, so therefore it's also in us. But like how we understand and interpret nature is already done through a gendered lens. So there you go. Good. I'm glad it's helping. Hibiscus Hydrogen, let me catch up on all your comments. I'd say look at the cultures they come from to see where the ideas lie. Yeah, absolutely. And like if you do, and you look at actually like how the New Age kind of took the concept of Shiva and Shakti from Hinduism, like it's totally different how it operates in Hinduism. So, but what they did is they took it and they made it fit into a Western patriarchal paradigm. Yeah. Do you think the New Age movement banks on the ignorance of said constructions and feeds on this, giving people a false sense of empowerment? Oh my God, I love this question. Because I think whether or not like New Age people are doing it on purpose, like that's the thing, like are we ever doing something on purpose, or is it just like implicit like whiteness and implicit patriarchy that kind of makes us like believe certain things and construct knowledge in a certain way? Like it doesn't matter ultimately if it's on purpose or not. The effects are the same. The effects are real. The effects are there. But it's giving a false sense of empowerment, like to who? That's my favorite question. It's to who is this empowering? Because for some people, the New Age constructions are icky and uncomfortable because they're not empowering, because they're not actually like inclusive. So they're going to feel empowering to a very specific subset of population, which is obviously like going to be like a white upper middle class audience. That's who it's empowering to. And that's why like dominant spirituality is white spirituality. So when you're not that person, if you're not like and like it very appealing to white men and white women, but like when you're not of that demographic, like, are you going to feel empowered? Probably not. You know what I mean? So it's a very interesting question, because it's like, who is it empowering? And do we really want to like support that empowerment. You know what I mean? Like certain philosophies can be empowering to white supremacists. Do we want that? Probably not, you know? Yeah, a lot of it is watered down appropriation for South Asian religion and also indigenous religions and traditions, yeah. Do you think New Age people prey upon people affected by colonialism who have been cut off from their cultures, allowing them to access to this more visible... Oh, thank you for the rose. You're so sweet. Allowing them to access to this more visible... Yeah, I mean, I think I don't know how much of it is like predatory. I'm sure there's some of it that's predatory, but I think some of it is also a symptom of colonialism. As you're saying, like colonialism has cut a lot of people, especially like colonized people, from their cultures, and has demonized that connection to the land and to like a more spiritual connection. So right now, as it is in spirituality, like New Age spirituality is like the dominant like gateway for people to connect to their spirituality. So it just kind of happens that it might also be just like capitalism, like New Age spirituality is like the biggest umbrella. And so if you're like a person of color and you want to connect, chances are you're gonna somehow at some point like be in like the New Age spiritual world. Maybe for a little bit, maybe for a long time, maybe they get really deep into it, but at some point it's gonna happen. I don't know how much of it is like predatory, but in the sense of like some spaces are definitely predatory, but I think from the bigger like social science perspective, I think I would see it from a bigger like systems relationship. Like colonization has cut people off from their culture, and now the only way to reconnect to your culture is through like white people. Like how messed up is that? Like that's literally neo-colonialism. You know what I mean? Like it's just such super messed up now, because the most common ways to connect to your culture now is going to have to be through a white person or white spaces. Classic colonialism. Like they destroy the original thing, they remake the thing in a different way, and then the people who have been like fucked are also affected. Does that make sense? I hope that helps. Thank you, alien emoji. I appreciate it. I appreciate the encouragement. Like, yeah, trying to reconnect with my culture. Yeah, I'm sorry. Like you have to be super careful, because that's exactly the problem. Like New Age people spreading a lot of misinformation, and also like kind of giving themselves like spiritual justification, being like, oh, in the spirit realm there is no such thing as like there's no such thing as following your lineage. Like you can honor anybody you want. Like it's a very easy cop out to just be like, oh, in the spiritual world, like there is no racism and colonialism. It's like, no, but we live in this world. So, yeah. Like the girl bossification of Lilith and appropriation of Kabbalah. Yeah, I think that's I see that a lot. Yeah. It's uncomfortable. Like honestly, like trust your icky feeling. Like I feel the same when people were like really obsessed with like ancient Egyptian gods and like Sekhmet and even like Ishtar, who like I grew up with stories of Ishtar, and Ishtar feels very close to me because I'm literally like from that area of the world, and I'm like, it's weird. It's weird that there is now such an obsession with these areas, with the gods and goddesses from these areas, but at the same time, like the Middle East is like still being bombed and still being, like messed up with like foreign wars, and like no one talks about that, right? It's like, it's weird. Like we have to get real with the politics of it. Like it feels weird. So it's kind of important to kind of acknowledge like the history of things, and it's the same thing with like, indigenous practices. Like folks are like using sage and Palo Santo and all these things, using them with zero acknowledgement of indigenous people. And at the same time, like Palo Santo forests are like getting destroyed and like indigenous people who use Palo Santo for their rituals can't use them because they're all going for export, and the forests are getting destroyed. So you know what I mean? It's like, it's a lot of like contradictions happening that I would love for us to like spend time thinking about those contradictions. And think about like the ethics of it, I actually was well known among Lilith appropriators as I called them out and they blocked me, etc. I've had people say that I'm wrong for calling people out for appropriation because, because X Jew said it. I think the sentence was not done, but yes, you're basically saying like some people in the community are saying like, oh yeah, like anyone can worship Lilith, like it's fine. And you're basically like, no, it's not fine, right? Do I understand that correctly? Yeah, I mean, it's kind of important to also like explain to people why, why it's not fine. Like why, basically I'd say you're appropriating, then they'd go, well, this just said it was okay. Yeah, classic. This happened. I had my friend Amanda from Activated Living on live, and it was the same thing, like people using ayahuasca and like doing ayahuasca plant ceremonies and being like, yeah, ex-indigenous person said it was okay. Like if you have to justify your practices by saying like someone gave me permission, then there's probably something deeper worth exploring, because why does that one person out there have ambassadorship and stewardship over this whole thing and say like it's okay? Like just because one person said it was okay doesn't mean it's okay. Like let's use our own critical discernment. Yeah. Well, thanks for sharing with us underground scene. Thanks for being here and learning. Thank you, user. You're so sweet. I do try to correct them, but then they go on misinformation. I mean, like, honestly, Hibiscus, like, you have to take care of your health, okay? Like, don't, make sure that you're taking care of your health and it's not, like, draining you too much. At some point, you also have to make sure that, you're paying attention to your well-being, Yeah, I was just gonna say it's a self-damaging cycle, so you have to be careful. That's why we have to be a community. Like you can't just do it on your own. You need people, Yeah. Honestly, like it digital wellness does start with taking care of curating your page. You know what I mean? So that you're not unnecessarily getting exposed to things that are like upsetting you. But at the same time, when you're ready for a battle, when you're ready for a hard conversation, you can do it, So it's like, there's a time and place for confrontation. There's a time and place for rest. Oh my God, you're all so active right now, asking me a million questions. I can't even make this. Does anyone actually care about this? I'm just kidding. I will answer your questions. Okay, so you're saying your cat says hi. Oh, I say hi back. She's been sunbathing in the heat. Just nibble on the croissant. Underground scene, the croissant's like 3 days old. I really want to do, like, this is the aspiration for Sunday morning, okay? This is what I'm trying to do today. Look at that. Does that not look amazing? So, this is the goal for today. So you asked me, Alien, can you talk about how spirituality has become a commodity? Yes, I'd love to know more, like what you want me to talk about, because yeah, it has become a commodity. Like it's become a commodity. I think you're probably asking me about like spiritual capitalism. Hibiscus is saying you have to start the custard before the next question. Okay, that's good, because it'll make me think about spiritual capitalism, which I did teach also a whole workshop. So, okay, I'll give you like a nugget of an answer. Yes, you can make challah bread pudding. You can. I'll let you, like, we'll try this recipe. We'll see if it's good, and if it's good, I'm happy to screenshot and send to you. Yeah, so spiritual capitalism. So, okay, in my workshop, I define spiritual capitalism in 2 ways. And these 2 things are a little bit different. So pay close attention. The first thing of spiritual capitalism is selling to a spiritual audience. That's the first thing, right? Like selling a product, a commodity, a course, a concept, selling something to a spiritual audience. That's the first aspect of spiritual capitalism, is that the audience is spiritual, but you're selling them something, right? So selling crystals, those like shops and stuff. And like, this is not to say, like, we're not putting any judgment on this right now. We're just defining things, right? So selling something to a spiritual audience is the first form of spiritual capitalism. It's kind of like the most obvious, right? It's kind of obvious. Like, so the spiritual industry, when we talk about the spiritual industry being worth like multiple billions of dollars, it's like the psychic lines and the psychic services, and it's the readings and the astrology, and it's like selling things for people. That's the first thing of spiritual capitalism. But the second thing, and that's the thing that like is more complex and more pervasive that I talk about, is the spiritualizing of capitalism. So you see how that's different? Like the first thing is you're selling a product to a spiritual audience. The second one is you're spiritualizing capitalism. You're basically turning capitalism into a spiritual, like, worshiping thing, right? So that's a bit different. And we see that in New Age spiritual spaces. We see that spiritualized capitalism, where we don't even talk about capitalism as it is anymore. We talk about it like it's a spiritual experience, right? And so in my workshop, we go through examples and like the layers of that. But like an example, a very, very clear example, is, for instance, manifestation. Manifestation is capitalism. Pull yourself up by the bootstraps. But it's talked about in this like prosperity gospel way. It's talked about in this like, if you work hard, you will get rewarded. It's no longer just like pure 9-to-5 grind. It becomes this spiritual experience of like the universe has your back if you just do this and that. So, and manifestation is everywhere. It's also in divine feminine and masculine. Like it's super tied into manifestation. Anything that tells you that you have to calibrate your thoughts in order to materialize something in reality is going to have some manifestation undertones. And so that's the difference here. Like we have selling to a spiritual audience. That's the first kind of spiritual capitalism. And then we have the spiritualization of capitalism. And it's sometimes hard to spot because we're speaking in spiritual jargon. But when you break it down, it's actually like pure, like late stage capitalist language used in spiritual terms. So if this is interesting to you, definitely check out actually there's nothing to check out right now, but like soon there will be the replay of the Intro to Woo Woo Capitalism course, which is like a full 3 hours on diving deep into that, and you would love it. Okay, so now I'm gonna do the custard, okay? There was something happening with the conversations on this side. Yes, underground scene. There is a newsletter. I think if you go to my LinkedIn profile, you'll be able to see where to subscribe to my newsletter, and you'll know about it from your inbox. I'll also like advertise it on TikTok, but like TikTok is kind of a weird space to advertise because I have no control of like who gets to see it and when, and maybe you'll see it like 2 weeks later, you know what I mean? Like it's not the best. So newsletter is, if you want to stay in touch, like stay in the newsletter, or Instagram. Actually, I'm pretty regular on Instagram too. Hibiscus, I'm looking at your question. You refuse to spend £500 for a 50-year-old book you could pirate. Does that go hand on saving money? Okay, so I'm seeing a couple of different threads here. Okay, I'm seeing a couple of threads. I'm gonna do the custard, and if you can't stick around for me to respond later, that's fine. I can always do like an Ask Me Anything another time. Okay, so hopefully that's okay, because I really need to get this done. So change in pace and change in yay, Aiden. Food. You missed like a whole, I don't even know how long we've been talking about. Like, it was not food. It was meant to be food, but we talked a lot of like different questions that we were doing. So now it's gonna be food. So let me see if I can do this. Okay. So bread pudding. Okay. Do you like seeing my face, or do you just want to see the food? Like, I never know. So I'm going to face and food. Okay, fine. Okay. Let me see. Maybe this is better? Yes. If I bend my knees a little bit, then you can see. Okay. So I'm halving the recipe because I'm only using 3 croissants, and the recipe usually calls for 8. And I'm doing this easy hack that makes me avoid having to use measuring cups and stuff, as I weigh everything. So I do everything in grams. So in a large liquid cup, whisk together the heavy cream, milk, brandy, and vanilla. All right, so I'm going to add the cream first. Okay. I'm kind of, I don't have the exact amount that is required. 140, okay. And then I'm gonna add the milk. Okay. So I don't have brandy, but I read that a substitute for brandy can actually be white wine. Okay, bye hibiscus. The underground sea, maybe a deeper dish instead of more width, since you have half the recipe. You don't think that this would work? It's pretty deep. The other deep dish that I have is a lot smaller. So this is just gonna have to do. So I read that white wine can replace brandy. So we're gonna try. I think it's meant to be like a little bit boozy. So just a little bit. 30. Okay. And also vanilla extract. I'll be back. I'm probably gonna use cane sugar because that's what I am able to get in bulk from Costco. When I do my coffee and stuff, I use coconut sugar because I love that flavor, and I also like, it's nice to have like unrefined sugars. But coconut sugar has become very expensive to bake with, and I'm an avid baker. I don't have brown, and brown would have been so nice because it would have given that caramel flavor, that like rich flavor. So I don't have that, but I'm gonna keep an eye out to see if I can find that at Costco. So now I'm gonna whisk all these together. Okay, so that's whisked, that's done. I like that you're making your own work. Thank you. Aiden, I did do the ASMR. I did. Did you check it out? My sister tells me that I was not loud enough. Nutmeg, cinnamon, yeah. This recipe doesn't call for it. It's okay, so this is a French recipe. It's called pain perdu. Pain perdu is basically like bread pudding, but like not exactly, I think. So I'm gonna follow the recipe and see what it says and then go from there. Because I have noticed that like in a lot of French recipes, there is no spices, like, and it tastes amazing. Like the crepes, I used to make crepes with cinnamon and stuff, but like I made a crepe like French style and it was so good. I did, yeah, it's on YouTube, Aiden. Yeah, it's on YouTube. It was my first attempt. I think it's pretty funny. I made a joke about revise and resubmit. So it's a very grad school niche joke. But yeah, I need to figure out like my audio settings a little bit better, and then I will keep doing more. So, okay, in a large bowl, beat the eggs. Okay. Okay, so there's 4 eggs. I am. I love French cuisine. I live in Montreal, so it makes sense that there's a lot of like French food here. And it's very yummy, and sometimes it's nice to just make it myself. So this is a French recipe cookbook. It's from a cafe that is there's a New York cafe, and then it's also in Montreal. It's called Maman. If anyone lives in New York City, if you've heard of a cafe called Maman. So it's basically their recipe books. I got this as a gift for Christmas, and this is my first time making a recipe from it. So we'll see if it's any good. But I have been in a phase recently where I follow recipes from recipe books. And I have to say that every single recipe that I've made from salt, acid, fat, heat has been an amazing, like mind-blowing recipe. Like it's so good. Yes, baking does serve as a form of meditation for me. Like it's very relaxing, it's very grounding. I bake every couple of days, at least once a week. It's almost like I need it, you know? There's something about it, like about doing something with my hands, building something, creating something, being able to share that with people afterwards. Right now, the cookbook that I would recommend is salt. It's actually right in front of me, so I'll just show it to you. This one. It's so good. Have you heard of it? It's amazing. And every single recipe I've done is super good in it. I never used to be into cookbooks. I used to spend a lot of time online, like researching recipes and stuff. And now I'm in it. Like I love cookbooks. Salt, acid, fat, heat has a section with recipes, but it's also really good, like instructional. It teaches you about salting. It teaches you about fat, acid, and heat, which are like, the chef argues that these are the 4 pillars of cooking. So I learned a lot about, like my cooking has never been the same because I salt properly now. Yeah, there is. It's nice, and there's magic in like leafing through and deciding what recipe you want to make. Okay, so I whip the eggs, I add the sugar and whisk until fully incorporated. Okay, so I'll get the sugar. I'm measuring, I'm weighing things so it doesn't look like I'm just like randomly throwing things into the bowl. Okay. I'm gonna incorporate. Will I be able to share my dish? Yes, I have a friend who's staying over. So we're gonna enjoy that dish together today. And my sister lives nearby, so whenever she comes over, I'll be able to have her try some. Yeah, I'm all about sharing with friends. Okay, so I would say this is fully incorporated. Okay, add the cream mixture to the eggs mixture, whisking until fully combined. Oh, easy. So now I'm gonna pour the creamy mixture over. Which is the best memory I have from a meal I made? Honestly, it's such a good question. Okay, maybe I'll tell you a recent memory. A recent memory, I was following that recipe book I was telling you about, and I made the chicken and garlic soup, and I followed the ingredients like exactly, like I followed it exactly as instructed. And my partner, my wife, when she tried it, she was like, this is the best thing. This is the best soup I've ever had in my life. And I was like, oh my God, yay. So it's such an accomplishment because she is not the type of person that will give me empty compliments. Much to my dismay, like I'm a Leo, I like want people to compliment me all the time. But she will, so like when she does compliment me, it's a huge deal. I'm like, oh, this is amazing. But in my family, we cook a lot. Like when I go over to my parents, we cook, we season things together, we make pie, we barbecue. So there's a lot of cooking that happens all the time. It really is, yeah. It's a great way to bond. Okay, let's give this. I'm just gonna add a little bit more vanilla to the mixture. Actually, just finish with one. Oh, okay. Let me try this and see if it's good. And then the next step is to submerge the croissant. It's tasty. Honestly, the white wine is amazing in this. Does anyone like add alcohol to their baking? Like I don't usually, but you know, I love both. I love both. I think I'm more a fan of sweet for my body means that I'm like kind of like in need of energy. So it's like the signals are different, you know? So my body will crave sweet when I need energy, when I'm tired, when I maybe didn't eat enough and I didn't realize I didn't eat enough, so I'll crave sweet. But if I crave salty, it's probably because I'm craving the mineral of salt. So like maybe after I exercised, or if it was really hot, if it's really hot outside, I'll crave salty. So I love both. Yeah. Okay. I thought the white wine would not have been good. So good to, it's amazing. It's actually, it doesn't taste like wine. It like makes it light. It makes it feel light, like super light and fresh. Okay, so now I'm going to, I guess like submerge. It's saying pour the mixture over the croissant. Okay. Okay. Gently pressing down to be sure they're completely submerged. Oh, I don't think they're going to be completely submerged. Oh, maybe you're right. Hi, Intention Pendant. Good to see you. Yeah. I've spent a lot of time like healing my body and figuring out what it needs, and maybe I'll talk about this more one day, but I was like really sucked into the whole like toxic health and wellness. Okay, you guys are right. Deeper dish. You're right. You're right. It's not gonna work. Okay, let's get a deeper dish. It's a square dish, but it's deeper. It's so hard for me to talk about it because it's like I'm so angry. Like I'm so angry at the whole space. And I worked with a health coach for a few years, and she was like telling me all the things that are very common in like health and wellness worlds, you know. It needs to be more bread. It should be filling the pan, otherwise it cuts. Oh, really? It will curdle? Okay, hold on. If I put it in a deeper dish, we're gonna fill it up to the max. Oh my god. Plus, these are amazing, good croissants. Like, they're from a really good... I mean, Montreal does croissants, like, really well, so... Can you see what I'm doing? Yeah. No, I haven't seen. What is that about the Mad Woman in regards to diet culture? No. But it's just like it's so messed up because like I didn't even know I was entering diet culture. I just thought that I was getting healthy and like they use the language of health and it's super manipulative because you think you're getting healthy, but actually it's exactly the same tropes. It's like demonizing food and restricting and basically I was starving myself and I thought it was okay because I was doing it under the supervision of someone. Okay, how does this look? Now the bread is really thick and layered. I'm gonna pour. You're interested in hearing about my personal experiences, spiritual experiences? Yeah, sure. Um, I started getting interested in spirituality in 2017, which is kind of interesting because in 2017 I was going through a really hard time. I had just come out to my family and it wasn't going well at all. And that's when I kind of turned to astrology because I needed some reassurance. You know, I needed some reassurance. I needed to understand like why is this happening? Okay, I'm gonna press till it's submerged. So I got into astrology and then I got more into tarot. And then it was kind of like that for a few years. And then I started doing like I worked with a witch who's like a medium, and she was awesome, and she was not toxic at all, and she's black, and I found her like online, and um, does her own thing, very much independent spiritualist, and has been older. She's like middle, like I don't know, like 50s, and she's been a witch for 30 years, and is awesome, awesome. Um, and I started taking courses with her. So I took like a course on like graveyard magic with her. I took a course on defensive magic with her, and it was awesome. But then somehow I think just like being more in the spiritual world, I started getting more interested in human design, and human design kind of like I noticed that with human design, I just felt like I constantly needed to know more. Like it just wasn't enough. What I knew wasn't enough. And so I started studying more and getting sucked into the whole like Instagram world of human design. And I noticed that it was helping me make decisions. It was helping me understand my decision making process. So the reason why I went into human design in the first place was because I felt like I needed more support in like making decisions. I just couldn't make my own decisions, which is like in hindsight, like it's interesting. Like, anyway, so I got certified in human design and I started studying it. And I remember in one of my workshops, like one of my students was saying this too. She was like telling me how like she was really into like psychic readings at one point in her life and like got like kind of really addicted to getting psychic readings. Like that's kind of me. Like I got addicted to human design and like no amount of study would ever make me feel like it was enough. Like I needed to know more. And slowly my whole world started shifting. Like I started seeing everything through the lens of human design, like everything through the lens of like energy channels and gates and like open and closed energy centers and stuff. And um it got a bit unhealthy because like at some point when you rely on spirituality so much that you can't even like connect to your own decision making process, you can't connect to your own agency. um I looked like I was on the verge of a revelation when like right now. uh yeah, I don't know how I ended up like leaving the world of human design. I actually think like when I started my TikTok account, like calling out toxic spirituality, I wasn't fully broken up with human design still. I was kind of like critical of it, but it was such a huge part of my world. So it's kind of interesting because I've had like really healthy spiritual experiences and also like not so healthy spiritual, like new age experiences, like classic new age. I mean, like you can't get more new age than human design. Like it's just super new age. So yeah, that's kind of giving you like a little insight now. So now after, you know, really diving into like toxic spirituality and being able to get back in touch with my academic side, which I kind of lost, like I kind of lost myself in that process. I rejected anything that was academic. I gave away all my books. I was like, fuck academia, because I was also very burnt out and hurt by that space. And so I kind of like threw myself into spirituality, and now I'm like I've come out of that extreme and I'm more in a balance. So in terms of spirituality now, the only thing that I really do that's spiritual is I have my ancestor altar. And I feel spiritual, you know, I feel very spiritual, I feel connected, and I'm very much into like goddesses and stuff, but I don't have a goddess practice right now. I had a goddess altar. I used to like journal my dreams and like interpret my dreams. I used to like learn tarot. So a lot of these things like I'm putting on hold as I continue like figuring out like my identity and my place, you know? Yeah. Touch on thoughts I've had, yeah. I mean, with New Age, you know that weird, I don't know if you've ever felt that, but it's like that weird feeling of like haunting, like something's off, you know? Like there's like this voice in the back of my head that's like, something's off, you know? And I just kept trying to suppress that because it was like, no, it's not off. Like human design has so many beneficial things and it's helped me so much and blah, blah, blah. But in the end, that voice won, and I feel so great about that because I feel relieved. I feel like, oh, I don't need to, like, yeah. Almost feels like I'm sideways. Like, how? Just because of my posture. So I think with a lot of New Age things, there's like basically our ethical side that wants to question and push back on what it is that we're doing. But then another side is like, no, it's okay, like just keep going, like it's fine, like it's fine. And I think finally I just had to confront the ethical side and be like, actually, there are a lot of issues with this system, and I'm going to acknowledge it, and maybe I need to break up with it. Like maybe that's what I need to do. I don't think it's always the case. I don't think we always need to break up with things, like, but for me, it was very beneficial. I was like, you know what? That's what I needed. I just did not need to rely on human design anymore. Oh, yeah, yeah. Oh, you mean the acknowledgement of the ache, body feels off. Yeah, it really does. It feels like this. Oh my gosh, you don't even know the amount of times I spent having to justify to myself that human design was okay. Like, there was a part of me that could see the problem, but then a part of me just didn't want to let go yet because I really was a little bit like dependent on that tool. And so I didn't want to let go, and I found myself really trying to justify it. For a very brief moment, I also started offering readings, and even in the readings, I would spend like 20 minutes with people framing New Age and giving them like, telling them like, hey, this is a New Age tool, it's got limitations, you're still an expert on your own experience, a tool is never going to be able to like tell you, you know, but still, there was still that like ickiness. So it feels much better for me now that I'm like, okay, you know what? I'm just gonna let it go. But in order for me to have felt empowered enough to let it go, I actually needed to boost my self-confidence. I needed to heal from my burnout from academia. I needed to do a lot of things. Like human design kind of became a crutch. So at a certain time, it was kind of hard for me to remove that crutch because I really was relying on it. So the liberation journey is always, so it's a complicated one. Someone recommended to poke holes into the croissants, and that's what I'm going to do. I love it. This looks so good, everybody. It smells amazing. I can't even begin to tell you. So I'm going to press it more. I'm going to press it down. And it's starting to look like it's getting completely submerged. So this is good. Getting it completely submerged. And I am poking holes. Here we go. I think this is good. It smells so good. So yeah, hopefully that, I know, I wish I could give you a bite and like send it to you via the camera. So there we go. Like I hopefully this was a good, you know, conversation for you all, and you know, that you're able to reflect on some big questions. I'm gonna let my bread pudding rest at least for an hour. before I put it in the oven and cook it. But maybe I'll film it. I'll film it and share it. De rien, ça m'a fait plaisir. So on that note, I think we should just say bye and happy Sunday. Maybe I'll do this like more regularly, just like a ask me anything cooking sesh. Maybe I'll pick a time. This is the thing, like I'm an air sign, right? I'm a Libra moon. Like it's hard for me to stick to a schedule, so I worry that if I put live every Sunday, I might not actually like be able to fulfill that promise. À bientôt. C'est quand le prochain? C'est pas sûr. Attends, here, come eat waffles. Yeah. Come, say hi to the friends are large. Your little cat. He's so cute. Say hi. I'm not sure, Aiden. I'm not sure. Should I come up with a regular schedule or should I just do it organically? Would you rather have like a known date? Be like, okay, stuff goes live every week at this time. Oui. Elle est adorable. Nah, organically. Okay. Okay, organically is good. This kitten is 17 years old. Insane, eh? Okay. All right. Well, thanks everybody. See you at the next organic pop-up live sesh. Oui, elle est très belle. Elle est très belle. Elle s'appelle Waffles. Her name is Waffles. Ciao tout le monde. Organically, but tell ahead. Okay, thanks, Mama Moon. That's helpful. Maybe I'll say ahead like a few days ahead of time, you know? Yeah. Okay. Ciao tout le monde. Bye. Much love. Thanks for participating. Really appreciate you all. Bye.